The night was silent across the human colony on the edge of space. Most people were inside the metal barracks, drinking and laughing after long shifts. But the silence broke when a group of soldiers marched into the main hall, their boots striking. The steel floor like drums, behind them, dragged by a heavy cage, came something strange, something not human. People left their tables and gathered quickly, their voices rising with curiosity. The cage door opened, and inside, under the harsh white light, lay a girl. Not a human girl, but something different. Her skin was pale like silver ash, her hair tangled and thin, her body weak as if life itself had been pulled out of her, her eyes half open, glowing faintly with an alien light that made people whisper. "She's broken." One soldier laughed, slamming his fist on the cage bars. "Just another toy from the war," another said, spitting on the floor. The crowd roared with cruel amusement, their laughter echoing like knives in the air. To them, she was nothing but entertainment. A prize from battle, something to mock and break further. But one man in the crowd did not laugh. He stood in the shadows, his arms crossed, his jaw tight. He was no officer, no hero, just a mechanic who fixed machines for the colony. Yet his eyes did not leave the alien girl. There was something in her silence that disturbed him. She did not cry, she did not fight, she did not beg. She only stared at the ground, as if the weight of the universe had crushed her spirit. The soldiers pushed the cage to the corner and left her there like trash. People soon grew bored and returned to their drinks. But the mechanic stayed still. He could not explain it, but inside him was a voice. Small yet sharp. "She is not what they think she is." Later that night, the hall was quiet again. The alien girl remained in the corner, her body curled tight, trembling, as though the air itself hurt her lungs. The mechanic walked past slowly, pretending to clean his tools. But his eyes kept stealing glances toward her. He noticed her hands, thin and shaking, pressing weakly against the cold floor. Her breath shallow. Every inhale a struggle, every exhale a whisper. Something in his chest tightened. She was not an animal, not a toy. She was alive, broken but alive, and there was pain in her eyes. Pain so deep that it made him turn his face away. He had seen many wounded soldiers before. Men bleeding, men crying, but this was different. This was quiet suffering, the kind that spoke louder than screams. Hours passed, the hall now empty. The mechanic sat near his workbench, his tools untouched. He heard something soft, almost too soft for human ears. A sound like a song, faint and fragile. Carried through the dark, he turned his head sharply. Listening, the sound came from the cage. The alien girl was humming, or maybe whispering. It was not human language. But it was not random either. It was like a cry, a song of sorrow, a broken melody that sank deep into the heart. He froze, his mind racing. No one else would believe him. No one else would even care. To them, she was broken, nothing more, but now he knew. She still had a voice. She still had life inside her. And if she had life, then maybe she had a story. The mechanic felt fear touch him for the first time that night, because in that small, trembling voice, he heard something dangerous. Hope. The next morning, the colony woke with the sound of alarms and metal doors sliding open. Workers rushed to their shifts, soldiers prepared for drills, and the hall filled again with noise. But in the far corner, the alien girl remained inside. Her cage, quiet, unseen, forgotten, her weak form almost melted into the shadows. Like she did not exist. People passed by her as if she were only furniture, a broken chair in the room. Some laughed when they looked. Some threw scraps of food, like she was an animal. Others kicked the cage for fun, hoping she would scream, but she never gave them the pleasure. Her silence was her shield. Her silence was her only weapon. The mechanic watched from his workbench. Every clang of his tools echoed in his mind. But his thoughts stayed on her. He noticed how her hands shook when she tried to move, how her shoulders tensed each time laughter exploded around her. She was not dead, but she was not living either. She was like a candle burning its last flame, fading in front of them all, that night. When the barracks emptied again, he walked past slowly. His eyes met hers for the first time. They were not the eyes of an animal, not the eyes of something broken. They were deep, silent, and heavy with a kind of sorrow that words could never explain. It made him stop in his tracks, his chest tight with something he could not name. He knelt near the cage, though fear prickled his skin. Her thin fingers reached out weakly, not to grab, not to attack, only to touch the cold floor between them. He realized then that she was not reaching for escape. She was reaching for warmth. Her silence was not empty, was a cry. Hidden and buried, the mechanic looked over his shoulder, making sure no one was near. His hand slid into his pocket, pulling out a small piece of bread saved from his meal. Slowly, carefully, he pushed it through the bars. For a moment, she did not move, only stared at the gift with wide, glowing eyes. Then, with trembling hands, she took it. She ate not like a beast, not with greed, but carefully, slowly. Each bite like it was the first she had tasted in years. His heart pounded as he watched her. There was something dangerous in this moment. Helping her was forbidden. Showing kindness to her was madness. If the soldiers saw, he would be punished. Beaten, maybe killed, but he could not turn away. Because in the dim light, as she ate, her eyes lifted once more, and in those alien eyes, he saw a spark, tiny, fragile, but real, the spark of life returning. Later that night, the sound came. Again, that strange whisper, that soft hum, that broken song. The mechanic lay in his bunk, staring at the ceiling, listening. The notes drifted through the metal air like smoke. It was not human, yet it carried weight. Each sound pressed against his chest, filling him with questions he could not answer. What was she saying? Was it sorrow? Was it memory? Or was it a call for help? He closed his eyes, letting the sound wash over him, and for the first time in years, he felt something he thought he had lost long ago. Compassion. The next day, things grew darker. The soldiers brought a group of visitors to the hall. Laughing loudly, they pulled the cage forward, showing the alien girl like a trophy. Look. At her, one shouted, barely alive, no fight left, nothing but decoration. The visitors jeered. Some even poked the bars with sticks. The mechanic clenched his fists, his anger hidden under a calm face. She stayed silent, her eyes low, her body still. But the mechanic noticed her fingers twitch. Her lips moved slightly. He leaned closer, pretending to adjust a tool. He realized she was whispering again. Not singing this time, but whispering words too soft to understand. Her silence was breaking. Her cry was becoming stronger. It was not for them, was for him. That night, when everyone slept, he dared to approach her cage again. He placed a small cup of water through the bars. Her weak hands wrapped around it, her body shaking with effort. She drank slowly, but as the water touched her lips, her skin seemed to glow faintly, almost invisible, but real. The mechanic froze, his breath caught. Something strange was happening. The water did not just heal her thirst, it was waking something inside her. She looked at him then, really looked, her eyes piercing through the shadows. And for the first time, her lips shaped a word, not in her language, but in his. Please, she whispered, her voice broken but clear. The mechanic's chest tightened like a vice. She was not broken. She was not empty. She was crying out, silently, patiently, waiting for someone to listen. And now, he was the only one who did. The next morning, the mechanic woke with heavy eyes. Sleep had escaped him, stolen by the whisper that still echoed in his head. One word, soft yet sharp, cut through the silence. Of the night, please, he carried that word with him as he worked through the day. His hands tightening bolts, fixing broken engines, pretending to be normal, but inside, his thoughts were restless, circling back again and again to the girl in the cage. Her faint glow when she drank water, the trembling in her voice, the spark of life hidden behind those alien eyes. He told himself to forget, to stay away, but he knew it was already too late. The colony lived by rules, harsh and unbending. Aliens were tools, nothing more. To show kindness was betrayal. To help them was treason. Everyone knew the punishment: public beating, exile, or death. Still, when the hall emptied that night, the mechanic found his steps carrying him toward the cage. His hands shook as he slipped another piece of bread through the bars. Her eyes widened, glowing faintly again. She ate quietly, never wasting, never rushing. And when she was done, she pressed her weak hand against the bars. Not to escape, not to attack, but in silent thanks, he froze, his own hand hovering near hers. Then, against every rule, against every fear, he placed his palm to the cold metal, our hand on one side, his on the other, and for a breath of time, the hall vanished. The rules vanished. The world vanished. Only the quiet connection remained, and something passed between them. Something he could not explain. A warmth, a pulse, like life itself answering back. The mechanic stumbled away, his chest tight. Fear clawed at him. What was he doing? Why? Was he risking everything for her? But another voice whispered inside him, because no one else will. Days passed, and each night he returned. Each night he brought her water, scraps of food, and each night her eyes grew brighter. Her trembling lessened, her breath grew stronger. But with each small victory, his danger grew larger. The soldiers had begun to notice. Strange, one said, laughing over a mug of stale beer, that alien's not dying yet. Another smirked. Maybe she's too stubborn to quit. The mechanic kept his face blank. But his heart raced. One evening, he slipped her a piece of cloth torn from an old uniform. She held it close, wrapping it around herself like armor. It was a small act, but her reaction struck him like lightning. Her eyes filled with something he had not seen before. Not sorrow, not emptiness, but strength. And for the first time, she whispered again. "Live," she said, her voice weak but clear. He froze, unable to move. Was she telling him to live, or was she promising that she would? The days grew darker. Suspicion spread. He heard soldiers whispering, their voices low but sharp. Someone's feeding it. Should let the commander know. Fear gnawed at him. But when he looked at her, thin and fragile, yet glowing stronger each day, he knew he could not stop. One night, he found her sitting upright for the first time, her silver hair falling across her face, her eyes burning with a strange light. When he knelt, she reached through the bars, her fingers brushing his hand, and in that touch he felt something strange, a current, soft but real, rushing through his skin. It was not painful. It was not violent. It was healing his old scars, the cuts on his hand from years of work. Tingled and faded, he pulled his hand back in shock. His breath caught. She stared at him, her lips trembling. "Help," she whispered again. Stronger this time, clearer. The mechanic's heart thundered. He was no doctor, no healer. But she believed he could save her, and in that belief, he felt a weight he had never carried before. From that night on, his secret act was no longer small. It was no longer about bread or water. It was about life, her life, and his choice too. Protect it. Each time he returned, he felt her strength growing. Each time she touched his hand, the warmth grew deeper, and each time, the fear of discovery grew heavier. One night, as he slipped a flask of water through the bars, a shadow moved behind him. He froze, his blood running cold. A soldier stood in the doorway, arms crossed, smirking. Well, the soldier sneered, looks like someone's making friends with the enemy. The mechanic's heart pounded, his hand tightening on the flask. The soldier stepped closer, eyes sharp with cruel amusement. This will be fun to report. For a moment, silence filled the air, heavy and sharp. The mechanic's mind raced. If they exposed him, he would be punished, maybe executed. If he fought, he might die tonight. But when he glanced back at the alien girl, her glowing eyes locked on his, her lips trembling with a single word. No. That single word cut deeper than any blade. It was not just her cry, it was his choice. The forbidden act had begun, and there would be no turning back. The soldier's shadow stretched across the hall, his smirk sharp, his voice dripping with cruelty. "You're feeding it," he said, pointing toward the cage, risking your neck for nothing. The mechanic's pulse hammered, his throat dry. One wrong move, and everything he had done would be exposed. But before the soldier could shout for others, a sudden noise echoed through the hall. A machine alarm blared from the other side of the colony. The soldier cursed, spat on the ground, and stomped away. Later, he hissed, leaving the mechanic frozen in fear. He waited until the footsteps vanished, then turned back to the cage. The alien girl sat trembling, her silver hair glowing faintly in the dim light. Her lips moved, her voice weak but filled with urgency. "Danger," she whispered, as if she had seen the threat before he had. The mechanic pressed his hand against the bars. Trying to steady his breath, she reached out, her thin fingers brushing his skin. And in that moment, something impossible happened. A warmth spread from her touch, not like heat from fire, but like a current flowing through his veins, his chest loosened, his fear dimmed, and the ache in his tired muscles faded. He pulled his hand back in shock, staring at his skin, the old cut across his palm. One he had carried for weeks was gone, not healed with time, but erased. The girl's glowing eyes locked with his, as if telling him silently, "I gave it back." He knelt closer, his voice low. "What are you?" he whispered, more to himself. Then to her, she only closed her eyes, her breathing heavy, her body still weak. But he saw it every time she touched him, her own strength dimmed, as if she gave a part of herself away. It was not just healing, it was sacrifice, that night. The mechanic could not sleep. He lay in his bunk, staring at the ceiling, replaying the moment again and again. The warmth, the vanished wound, the whisper of danger. She was not broken. She was not useless. She carried something powerful, something dangerous, and the more he helped her, the more that power seemed to wake. The following evening, he returned with water and scraps of food. Her hands were steadier now, her breaths deeper when she drank. Faint patterns lit up on her skin, glowing like hidden symbols carved by the stars. They faded quickly, but he saw them clearly. Strange curves, sharp lines, signs that no human could understand. His heart raced, a mix of awe and fear. "What is happening to you?" he whispered. She lifted her head slowly, her voice barely a thread. "Life." Coming back, the mechanic sat in silence, the weight of her words pressing heavy on him. Every choice he made pulled him deeper into danger, but also closer to a truth no one else wanted to see. She was healing not because of medicine, not because of time, but because he had listened, because he had cared, and that care had woken something sleeping inside her. For the next few nights, the changes grew clearer. Her voice gained strength. Her eyes glowed brighter, and her body no longer shook with every breath. She still carried scars, still looked fragile. But there was fire building beneath the surface. Once, when his hand brushed hers, he felt not just warmth, but visions, fleeting images flashing in his mind. A sky of burning stars, a world shattered by war. A girl screaming as chains pulled her away. He gasped, pulling his hand back, his heart pounding. "What was that?" he whispered. But she only shook her head, too weak to explain, too broken to tell it all. Yet he understood enough. She was not just an alien girl, not just a prisoner. She was something more, a survivor of a storm greater than he could imagine. And if she healed fully, she might reveal the truth. But truth was dangerous. Already, whispers spread through the barracks. The soldiers noticed the glow, the way she no longer looked close to death. "She should have been gone by now," one muttered. "Something's off," another said. Narrowing his eyes at the cage, the mechanic kept his head down, but his mind raced. He was running out of time, one night when he offered her water. She grabbed his wrist instead, her grip weak but steady, her glowing eyes locked on his. "Hide me," she whispered, her first words strung together. He froze. The weight of her plea heavy as stone. Hide her where, how? Why? But the way she held his wrist, the way her voice trembled, told him everything. If he did not act soon, someone else would, and it would not be with kindness. He sat back, his chest tight. This was no longer a small secret, no longer a forbidden act hidden in shadows. This was a choice that would define his life. The girl was healing, her strength rising, her voice growing. But every step forward dragged him deeper into danger, and the walls of the colony were closing in. The mechanic looked at her through the bars, his voice firm despite the fear in his chest. "I'll help you," he said softly, "but you must trust me." Her glowing eyes softened, her lips forming a word he had not expected. "Trust," she whispered, her voice breaking, yet filled with hope. That night, as the colony slept, the mechanic made his decision. He would no longer just feed her, no longer just ease her pain. He would fight for her, protect her, even against his own kind. Because the strange healing was not only hers, it was his too. It had changed him, and now there was no going back. The colony's halls grew colder with each passing night. The laughter of soldiers no longer carried the same joy. It carried suspicion. They had begun to notice the alien girl's change. Her back no longer bent as low, her eyes no longer dull. Whispers spread like smoke. She should be dead. "She's getting stronger." The mechanic heard these words, each one cutting like a blade. Every day he worked in silence, his face. But inside, his heart raced. He knew it was only a matter of time before someone discovered the truth. Each step he took toward the cage was heavier, each gift of water or food riskier. Yet he could not stop, because the girl was no longer fading, she was rising. One night, the sound of boots echoed through the hall. A group of drunken soldiers stumbled in, their eyes wild, their laughter sharp. They dragged chairs, slamming them down, pointing at the cage. "Bring her out," one shouted. "Let's see if she can scream." The mechanic froze, his stomach twisting. He watched as they pulled the cage forward, unlocking the door. The alien girl clutched the cloth he had given her, trembling, but when one soldier reached to grab her arm, she pulled back. Her glowing eyes flared with something fierce, something alive. The men laughed louder. "Look at that," one sneered. "She's still got fire in her." They shoved her forward, her weak body stumbling, but before she fell, the mechanic moved. He caught her, his hands steadying her shoulders. For a breath, silence filled the hall. The soldiers stared, their drunken smiles fading. "You," one growled, stepping closer. "What do you think you're doing?" The mechanic's throat went dry, but before he could speak, the girl did. Her voice broke the air like glass, weak yet clear. "Help," she whispered, the human. Words sharpened the silence. The soldiers froze, their eyes wide. They had never heard her speak, never heard her form a word in their tongue, and in that moment, the truth could no longer be hidden. The mechanic felt the weight of 1,000 eyes upon him. Every choice he had made now burned into the open. The girl clung to him, her thin fingers gripping his sleeve, her glowing eyes staring up, not with fear, but with trust. The soldier's shock turned to rage. She speaks. One hissed. "That's impossible. She's not broken." Another snarled. "She's dangerous." The mechanic stepped back, his body shielding her. He knew what came next. They would take her away, tear her apart, study her until nothing remained. He could not let it happen, not after all he had seen, not after all she had whispered. The soldiers lunged forward, but the girl raised her hand. Her body shook, her strength barely holding, yet from her skin. Faint light spread like cracks of starlight through darkness. The men froze. There? Faces pale. "What is that?" One whispered, backing away. The mechanic stood in awe, his heart pounding. He realized then that she had been hiding it. Her power, her voice, her truth. She was never broken. She was only waiting. The soldiers stumbled back, fear in their eyes. They muttered curses, retreating toward the door. "This isn't over." One spat, his voice trembling when the hall finally emptied. Silence returned, heavy and sharp. The girl collapsed against the mechanic, her body weak, her glow fading. He caught her, lowering her gently to the ground. Her lips moved, her voice faint. "No more hiding," she whispered. The mechanic's chest tightened. The secret was out. The risk now doubled. But he could not turn away. He brushed her hair from her face. Speaking low, "They'll come for you," he said. "For us." Her glowing eyes opened slightly, her voice breaking. "Then run," she whispered. The mechanic looked around the hall. Every corner filled with shadows. The colony was no longer safe. He could already hear distant voices, soldiers shouting, commanders demanding answers. His time had run out. The secret revealed itself not only to him, but to everyone. And now? There was only one path left. He lifted her gently. Her fragile body lighter than air. Her head rested against his shoulder, her weak breath brushing his ear. He carried her back into the corner, hiding her beneath broken crates and shadows. For now, it was enough. But tomorrow, when the soldiers returned, it would no longer be a game. It would be war. The mechanic sat beside her, his hand brushing hers. Her skin glowed faintly, a soft warmth pulsing through his veins. He closed his eyes, whispering softly, "I won't let them take you." Her lips curved into the faintest smile, her whisper carrying like a fragile pea. The mechanic did not sleep that night. He sat in the shadows of the hall, listening to every sound, every bootstep echoing outside. The alien girl lay hidden behind broken crates. Her breath shallow but steady. Her faint glow pulsed like the heartbeat of a dying star. And with every pulse, he felt both hope and fear. At dawn, the doors slammed open. Commanders stormed in, their eyes sharp, their voices hard. "Where is she?" one barked. Scanning the hall, soldiers spread out, searching corners, dragging crates aside. The mechanic kept his face calm, his hands busy with tools, but inside, his chest burned with fire. The girl stayed silent, her glow dimmed to almost nothing. She hid not just her body, but her very presence, as if folding herself into the shadows. It worked for now, but he knew it would not last. The commanders were not fools, and suspicion already pointed in his direction. Later, when the hall emptied, he whispered to her, "They're watching me." Her glowing eyes opened slowly, her voice weak but steady. "Danger grows," she said, each word heavy with warning. He clenched his fists, knowing she was right. The colony began to shift. Guards patrolled more often. Officers questioned workers, and whispers filled the air. "Someone is helping it. They'll find him soon." The mechanic kept his head low, fixing broken engines, carrying heavy parts, pretending to be invisible, but his secret weighed heavier each day. One evening, as he returned to the hall, he found her waiting at the edge of the cage, her thin fingers Wrapped around the bars, her eyes glowing brighter than before. When he knelt, she touched his hand. And again the warmth surged through him. But this time it was stronger, sharper. Visions struck his mind, flashes of battles, burning ships, chains binding her wrists. And then stars, endless and bright. Calling her home, he gasped, pulling. Back, his body shaking, she whispered, "My people." Her voice trembling with both sorrow and hope. The truth unfolded in his heart. She was not just a prisoner, not just a trophy. She was someone important, maybe even sacred. And if her people came searching, the colony would not survive the storm. That night, as he lay in his bunk, he overheard soldiers outside. "They say the fleet is moving closer," one muttered, "alien ships." Another said, his tone filled with dread, "They're looking for something." The mechanic's blood ran cold. He knew exactly what they were looking for. The next day, the commander called for him. He stood in the office, the air thick with smoke and steel. "You work near the cage," the commander said, his voice sharp. "You've seen it, haven't you? Tell me, has it spoken?" The mechanic's heart pounded. But he forced his face to stay blank. "No, sir," he said quietly. "It makes no sound." The commander studied him with cold eyes, then leaned closer. "If I find out you are lying," he whispered, "I'll make sure you disappear." The mechanic bowed his head, left the office, and walked back to the hall. His hands shook, his chest tight. He had bought time, but only a little. The walls of suspicion were closing around him. That night, he returned to the cage, his voice low and urgent. "They know," he whispered. "They're watching me." The girl reached out, her hand trembling. "You must choose," she said softly. "Me or them." The words struck like thunder. If he stayed loyal to the colony, he would survive. If he chose her, he would be hunted, hated, destroyed. But as he looked into her glowing eyes, he realized the choice had already been made. The next day, soldiers entered the hall again. This time, they did not laugh. They did not joke. They carried chains and weapons. Their faces set with grim purpose. "Take her," the commander ordered. The mechanic's blood ran cold. The girl's eyes widened, her body trembling, her lips forming the words she had spoken before, "Help." The mechanic moved before he could think. He grabbed a wrench from his bench and swung it. The metal crashing against a soldier's arm. Shouts filled the hall, chaos erupting like fire. The girl's glow flared, light spilling from her skin. The soldiers stumbled back, blinded for a moment. The mechanic grabbed her hand through the bars, his voice sharp. "Run!" She pushed with all her strength, and the cage door burst open, not from his hands, but from her power. The soldiers stared in shock, their fear turning to rage. "Stop them!" the commander roared. But it was too late. The mechanic pulled her close. Her fragile body pressed against his. Together, they dashed through the hall. Soldiers chasing, alarms blaring, the colony shook with sirens. Red lights flashing across steel walls. The rising danger had come. No longer whispers, no longer shadows. It was war, and it had begun with them. The colony burned with alarms. Red lights flashed across steel walls. Soldiers shouted orders. Boots thundered against the metal floors. The mechanic pulled the alien girl through narrow corridors, his grip tight, his breath sharp. She stumbled beside him, her body weak but her eyes glowing brighter than ever. Behind them, the commander's voice roared like fire. "Find them, stop them. Don't let them leave alive." Dozens of soldiers spread through the halls, weapons raised. The mechanic knew every step was a risk. Every corner could be their last, but he did not slow. Not now, not when freedom was so close. They slipped through maintenance tunnels, crawling under pipes and wires. The mechanic's heart pounded, his body aching. The girl leaned against him, her voice trembling. "They are near?" he stopped, looking at her glowing eyes. "You mean the soldiers?" he asked, but she shook her head. "No. My people." The words struck him harder than any weapon. Her people, the ones he had seen in visions, the ones who had burned across his mind like starlight. They were coming, but were they here to save her or to destroy everything in their path? As they pushed deeper into the tunnels, the ground shook. A low rumble echoed through the steel walls. Followed by a piercing alarm, the mechanic knew the sound. Ships, not human ships, but alien ones. Breaking through the colony's defenses, the girl's hand tightened around his, her lips trembling with one word. Home. The ceiling shook, dust falling like rain. Soldiers panicked above. Some firing weapons into the sky, others fleeing. The colony was collapsing into chaos, but the commander's voice still thundered through the speakers. "Hold the gates, stop the invaders, kill the traitor." The mechanic pulled the girl toward the landing bay. It was their only chance, their only way out. But as they entered the vast open space, they froze. Rows of soldiers stood ready, weapons aimed, their faces hard. And in the center, the commander himself waited, his eyes cold as steel. "You," he spat, pointing at the mechanic. "You betrayed us for a thing, an animal." The mechanic stepped forward, his chest tight, his voice steady. "She's not an animal," he said. "She's alive, more alive than any of us." The commander sneered, his weapon raised. "Then you'll die with her." The soldiers aimed, their fingers tense on the triggers. The mechanic's breath caught, his mind racing. He had no weapon, no shield, nothing but his body between her and them. But then the girl stepped forward, her weak frame shaking, her glow burning brighter. She raised her hand, and the air shifted. Symbols of light crawled across her skin, pulsing with power. The soldiers froze, fear flashing in their eyes. The commander shouted, "Fire!" Bullets cut through the air, but before they could strike, a wave of light burst from her body. It spread like a shield, bending the metal, slowing the bullets until they fell harmlessly to the floor. The mechanic stared in awe, his chest heavy with both fear and wonder. She was no broken prisoner, no toy for entertainment. She was a force, a survivor, a beacon, and she had chosen him. But the effort cost her. Her body shook, her knees buckled, and she fell into his arms. Her glow flickered. Fading. "They will take me," she whispered weakly. "But I wanted you to see." The mechanic held her tight, his throat burning. "I won't let them take you," he said, his voice breaking. "Not now, not ever." Above them, the roof split open. Alien ships descended, their hulls shining with silver light, their engines roaring like storms. The soldiers panicked, firing wildly into the sky. The commander shouted orders, his voice drowned by the thunder of engines. And then, beams of light cut through the bay, striking the floor with blinding force. The alien fleet had arrived. The mechanic looked up, his heart racing. Were they here? As saviors or executioners, the girl's eyes fluttered open, her voice barely a whisper. They came. For me, her hand touched his cheek, her fingers trembling. "Risk life," she whispered, "to heal me." Her words faded, her eyes closing, her glow dimming. The mechanic held her tighter, lifting her as soldiers scattered. Alien beams tearing the colony apart. He dashed toward the light, his body aching, his lungs burning. Every step was fire, every breath a battle, but he did not stop. Because this was the final risk, the last chance, and if he fell now, she would be lost forever. Behind him, the commander raised his weapon, his eyes burning with fury. "You will not take her," he roared, firing one last shot. The bullet tore through the air, aimed at the girl's heart. The mechanic twisted, his body shielding hers. The shot struck him, pain exploding through his chest. He staggered, his vision blurring, but his arms never let go. The alien ship lowered a beam of light, pulling them upward. The mechanic's body shook, blood warm. Against his chest, the girl's glow flared once more. Her hand pressing against his wound, warmth surged through him. Stronger than ever, his pain faded. His breath steadied. She looked at him, her glowing eyes filled with tears. Together. She whispered, "The light."